I've been watching your work and your clips for like forever. So I'm fairly new at that, and I've been quite nervous about it. I have the feeling of interviewing a rock star. So, but it will go away eventually.
No problem. No problem.
Okay. So let me just open my notes. Yeah. So as I stated in my email, I would like to cover first the principles at play, then go a little bit into detail to show people that there is science behind all that,
Indeed.
and that basically they can trust these findings. So first of all, would you be able to tell us in a few words what whole food plant-based nutrition is about and why it's so important about health, environment?
Oh my. Big question, but I'll try
Yeah,
to
yeah.
hold it as succinctly as I can.
Mhm.
It starts with the basic reality of our anatomy. We evolved through the simian line of creatures, and we basically have the same digestive system that our gorilla and bonobo cousins have. And they're up in the trees today eating leaves and fruits. And we have basically the same type of digestive system made to run on whole plant foods, whole plant fiber. And when we do that, we eat lots of grains and beans and fruits and vegetables. This presents our intestine with an ideal mix of various types of fiber that allow the intestine to extract the nutrients using enzymes, etc., but also to push it along and create normal bowel function. We're not carnivorous apes, no matter what the
Yeah.
paleo folks try to convince us. We are plant-eating creatures. And so a whole food plant-based diet really puts an emphasis on whole foods in that the food you should be eating on a daily basis, what appears on your plate, are the foods that you could recognize growing in the garden. An ear of corn,
Yeah.
not corn chips. Whole tomatoes, not ketchup. Potatoes, not potato chips, etc. Whole foods like they were growing there. So we're talking
Yeah.
about colorful salads and hearty lentil stews and bean chilies and vegetable curries and healthy grains like quinoa and millet and buckwheat. And lots of legumes, which are especially rich in protein, beans, peas, chickpeas, lentils, anything that grows in a pod is a legume. And fruits and vegetables, especially nice fruits for desserts, mangoes, papayas, whatever you have growing in Bulgaria there. And make it in the form of easily to prepare stews and soups, etc. It's not that hard to do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as I tell my colleagues in America, who complain about not eating their meat, say, listen, we're just talking about at the restaurant ordering the bean chili instead of the beef chili. It's not that big a deal.
Yeah.
You're already eating these foods.
It's not that difficult.
Just make them whole food and plant-based, and you'll be fine. Your body will know what to do with it.
Yeah, yeah. I would say that almost sadly, Bulgaria has become a rich country in the past 20 years. So people are starting to suffer from diseases of affluence, basically, like everywhere. And
Everywhere.
that was kind of the good side of having communism. If that could
Yes,
be.
in a way, it's a left-handed blessing, as they say. Yes, in a way, some price, but I'm sure you had.
A huge price, but yeah.
Yeah, really. But I'm sure there was less heart attacks and strokes, etc., because the people just weren't
There
eating the
was.
meat
There
and
was.
cheese and sugar and oils that injure the arteries and set people up for these diseases.
Well,
But now they've flooded into your diet like they have in ours, and you're seeing the same diseases we are as well.
I got into plant-based nutrition for the same reasons. I saw a big change in some close people of mine. I'm getting into my 40s now and feel much better than when I was 25. So yeah, that works. I can testify that it works.
Absolutely. It certainly happened in my life as well, in my body. Uh, I was working as a resident in anesthesiology. I was going to be an anesthesiologist in Vancouver, and I'm on the cardiovascular anesthesia service dealing with people's hearts and blood vessels. And day after day, I'm putting people to sleep and watching surgeons
Oh
open up
my.
their arteries and pull this yellow fatty material called atherosclerosis out of their artery walls. And one day I'm watching the surgeon pull a particularly yellow rubbery piece of fatty material out, and I'm thinking to myself, boy, that stuff looks like chicken fat. And the little voice on my shoulder said, there's a good reason why it looks like chicken fat, doctor.
Yeah.
It is chicken fat and cow fat and pig fat and the fat of the animals this man was eating. And there was already medical studies in the literature doing that, and they were saying that. And my father was showing signs of clogged arteries. I clearly have the genes for that disease. And I knew I was going to be laying on that operating table soon with that striker saw going up my sternum, and I didn't want that. So I changed my diet to a plant-based diet. Within 12 weeks, a 10-kilo spare tire of fat melted off my waist. My high blood pressure came down. My high cholesterol came down. And like you, I felt great waking up in a nice lean body every day.
Yeah.
And I realized I had a very important key to health. And I didn't want to be an anesthesiologist anymore and put people to sleep all day. I'd rather go back to general practice and help them wake up. So I did, and I've been a nutritionally based general practitioner ever since 1982.
Whoa.
And what you and I both know happens. People who follow a plant-based diet get lean and healthy, and their arteries open up, and the high blood pressure comes down, and the joints stop hurting, and the skin clears up, and the nose stops running, and the asthmatic lungs stop wheezing so much, and the migraine headaches reduce or go away. And people turn into normal, healthy people who don't need a lot of pills and potions and
I
procedures.
presume
And
it's
that's fine,
much more
yeah.
satisfying now to
Absolutely.
work.
We're not on this planet to suffer and to be
Yeah.
sick. And no, we're here to live our lives and raise our kids and walk out in the sunshine and make it a better world. And a plant-based diet will let you do that.
It has become almost equal in people's mind that getting older and getting sick is the same thing, and doesn't seem to be so.
No, absolutely not. Thank you for saying that. And as a physician, I can tell you that's not normal aging. Normal aging is to hit your 90s and 105s, lean and healthy with open arteries and supple joints and strong muscles, so you can walk the hills with your great-grandchildren and enjoy the sunshine and the sunsets. That's what normal aging should be. The term is your health span. The lifespan is how many years you live, but how many of those years are really healthy? That's your health span, where you can do what you want to do without pain or disability. And you want your health span to be as close to your total lifespan as you can. You want
Exactly.
every day as you
Exactly.
can be active. And it can be, but I had a wise professor in medical school said, people don't get diseases, they earn them. Day after meal, argument after argument, sleepless night after sleepless night, alcoholic drink after cigarette, the day after day of unhappiness. This is how people earn diseases. And it doesn't have to be that way. And as you're implying, the body has this amazing ability to reverse these diseases. The diseases largely go away. And that's made me the happiest doctor I know. My patients get healthy. Go ahead.
I've heard so many times that the human body is such an amazing machine, etc. And through the years, getting first of all, when you're young, you're always fine. You have energy, and then you practice a lot of sports, and it doesn't matter what you do, it goes well. But then you start getting fat, etc. Yeah, and hearing that the body is that amazing machine, I was always wondering. I was like, what the hell? If that is amazing, it keeps on breaking, and now I understand why it kept on breaking.
Indeed, these are self-inflicted injuries. But you're right.
Yes.
The body it's nothing short of a miracle. I've been a physician 47 years, and I'm constantly every day I see another amazing thing that our body does. And I've worked in many emergency rooms and urgent care clinics, and people come in with lacerations in their skin. And I'm a good surgeon, and I do a very nice repair of the wound, but I know all I'm doing is putting the edges of the wound together. I don't know how to spin new capillaries out and new fibers of collagen and grow new epithelium. But the body knows how to do that. How does it know?
Yeah.
And the body always wants to go towards health. The body doesn't want to be inflamed. It doesn't want to be swollen. It doesn't want to be short of breath. And it has these self-correcting mechanisms that if we just stop interfering with them, with sugary and fatty foods and all that stuff, the body will heal itself. I've seen amazing things happen. Arteries open up, and these diseases, diabetes, asthma, many of them get so much better or go away completely. It's a remarkable thing to see the body heal itself. But give it the right food and some rest and some sunshine and some love,
of course,
it does it.
To go a little bit into the details,
Sure.
because as I was saying, sadly the quantity of information available here is quite few. I've spent about 20 years of my life in France, and sadly, even in France, it's scarce. So I would like to promote it as much as possible, but not being a physician myself, not being a medical doctor, it's almost impossible to have people listening to you. So that's why I'm very grateful to you helping out, because that will give some weight to what I'm trying to convey as a message. So most people understand fairly easily that meat has no fiber, no vitamins, and but what's the big difference between meat protein? Why is it so detrimental and hurts our metabolism and nourishes cancer, etc.? What's the difference with amino acids from plants?
The body is so complex. There's a concept in mathematics of recent years called fractals, and the closer you look at something, the more it breaks up into smaller and smaller pieces. Well, nutrition kind of works the same way. When what's wrong with meat protein? There's so many aspects to it. Just the quality of it. It contains more amino acids. Protein is a chain of amino acids, and meat protein has a lot of amino acids like taurine and cysteine and methionine that contain an atom of sulfur, and sulfur in water turns into sulfurous acid, and so meat brings in this acid load that can be hard on the bones, hard on the kidneys, hard on the liver. When the amino acids in a piece of meat are eaten, they flood into the liver, and the liver responds by putting out a hormone called insulin-like growth factor 1, IGF-1, and this hormone is the most powerful growth-promoting hormone in the body. And this is a good mechanism when you're a growing boy or a growing girl. When you eat some protein, you want that liver to respond with a surge of IGF-1 and turn it into muscle and bone, etc. But when you're already a grown man or a grown woman, if you've got a little breast cancer growing or you've got a little prostate cancer growing, and you're eating all this meat, you are keeping your IGF-1 levels elevated. Well, this is like throwing gasoline on a fire, and so it'll foster cancer growth. Nobody eats raw meat. You got to cook it. The very act of cooking meat creates cancer-causing molecules, heterocyclic amines, on the surface of the meat that rub on the colon wall, and sets off cancers. The very act of cooking meat oxidizes the cholesterol in the meat, and now you've got oxidized cholesterol flowing through your arteries. Well, this is very irritating material, is oxidized cholesterol, and particles of it get into the walls of the artery and set off inflammation that results in atherosclerotic plaque formation that leads to heart attacks and strokes. The animals are fed growth promoters and hormones, antibiotics that accumulate in the meat as the animal eats this doctored food every day, and so every time you eat that piece of meat, you're consuming again antibiotics and growth promoters and herbicides and pesticides.
Yeah.
It's toxic stuff, and then it becomes more toxic as meat is fatty stuff, and the fat accumulates into the muscle cells. That fat then interferes with the insulin receptors, so makes people go diabetic, high fat diets. And the fats accumulate and they oxidize in there, and you get these free radicals formed from the oxidized fats that build up in the muscles. And that in turn injures the mitochondria and cell membranes and sets us up for cancer growth. All the way around, it's the wrong fuel. It's like putting diesel fuel in a gasoline burning engine. I mean, we're not mountain lions. We're not house cats. They can handle a meat-based diet because their intestines are so short, they move it out real quick before it causes any great damage. But we've got these great long herbivorous intestines, and all this fat and cholesterol and carcinogens are absorbed and create terrible mischief in our body. It's the wrong fuel. We're not carnivorous apes.
I've spent quite a few years before getting into nutrition, being a developer, a web developer, and I often give the analogy to people that, at least to my understanding, what we know about the human metabolism is quite little compared to the whole thing, and it's pretty much like we're trying to fix a software that has been given to us by some alien species that is 1,000 years ahead, and we're trying to fix it by patches here and there, but it keeps on breaking because we don't know what we're doing, basically. So
on some level, but on another level, we do. We're just violating natural law. I've never had a gorilla in the office saying, "Doctor, I don't know what to eat," or I'm constipated from all this meat and sugar that I'm eating. They know what to eat. We're violating the anatomy that we've been given. Mm-hmm.
That's one of my key points here, that I would like to simplify as much as possible for people this understanding that it's a lifestyle, it's not a diet. It's not just a diet. It could be a diet for a certain time, but then it has to be a lifestyle, and that you can be relaxed about it. Basically, I contacted you first because I like your approach about that. It doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be a burden every day, waiting stuff in the kitchen and not knowing what you should be eating and what you shouldn't be eating. And let basically nature play its role. So
Indeed, yes, and people don't tell me I'm never going to eat meat again. Okay, we won't say that, right? Ideally, there's all sorts of reasons why we humans need to evolve our diet if we want to survive on this planet to a plant-based diet, which we can talk about. Mm-hmm. But just on the individual person, just start with a breakfast. So if you eat breakfast that has no animal products, they have porridge or oatmeal with some fruit in it, and some of this lovely. Do you have rice milk or almond milk or those kind of milks there? To pour that on there. Or orange juice works good on your cereal. Water will work, but if you don't have to have eggs and bacon, etc. for the morning. And lunches and dinners, just make one lunch. If you folks eat 3 meals a day there, do you have a midday meal? So make up a big pot of really hearty vegetable soup with all sorts of cut up vegetables and some rice and beans and lentils in there, and make it a hearty tomato-based soup, and let it cook overnight or all day. And then lots of ways to enjoy that. You can take some. Do you have freezer containers, and ladle in the soup into the freezer containers, let them cool, put a lid on them, put them in the freezer, and now you got a freezer full of soup there. If you don't want to cook, to bring them out, heat them and eat them. That's what we do here. Have a big salad going in the fridge, so you always want something fresh every day. And then the nice thing, you can eat all this food you want, whether you have a third bowl of bean chili, it doesn't matter. It's all high fiber foods and water, basically.
Yeah.
So there's no guilt or calorie counting. And so you can
Hmm.
season it up and make it Italian style and Chinese and East Indian and Mexican and have fun with all the flavorings. But
Sure.
it's time to move away from this meat based diet. It's hurting us.
Sure, sure. So we didn't really follow the the notes I had, but it's great. So
Yeah.
talking of toxins, because we very often hear that term toxins, we know that it's a bad thing, but nobody really has a clue of as to what that is. And we hear that there is a lot of toxins in meat and few fiber, so we don't have basically the isolation for these toxins not to go into the bloodstream. So could you just tell us a few words how
Sure.
that works?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, unless you have the luxury of organically grazed grass-fed beef like they do here, which is another environmental disaster. We won't go into that right now. But animals are they're not treated well, and and the food that they're fed is the
Mm,
cheapest type of grains and beans that will cause the greatest growth in fat and muscle on their body as quickly as possible. And
mm,
so these grains are, especially if they're imported from America, they're sprayed with herbicides and pesticides, and often have growth promoters, antibiotics. If you feed the animals antibiotics, kills off their own gut bacteria, so the animal has more calories to metabolize, so they grow faster. So all this winds up in the meat. These are fat soluble molecules.
mm,
These are fatty animals, and so the antibiotics and the hormones, these are concentrating as the weeks go by in the
mm.
animal's flesh. So you wind up eating all the concentrated herbicides, antibiotics, growth promoters, pesticides, and the
Yeah.
water often is contaminated with heavy metals, with arsenic and lead and mercury and cadmium. That winds up in the animal's muscles as well. And
Yeah.
these are not clean animals on a chemical point of view for sure. As I mentioned, the fats build up into the tissues and they oxidize and they interfere with enzymes. It becomes kind of an internal toxin. Again, I'm not saying that our ancient foraging ancestors, if they came upon a rotting carcass in the sun, they didn't scavenge a little bit once a week or so, but they had to be careful because there's no refrigeration. If you ate a lot of
Mm.
meat, you often wind up dead with botulism. But body can handle small amounts of meat, but to be eating it 2 and 3 times a day, that spawns microbes in your gut that put out molecules like trimethylamine oxide that damage the artery walls and sets you up for heart attacks and strokes. That's a kind of toxicity as well. Again, the folks who eat the plants don't spawn those bacteria. The vegans don't create these artery injuring bacteria in their gut because their diet doesn't support that. But you eat meat and eggs every day, you summon up these microbes that turn the carnitine in the meat into the stuff called trimethylamine that damages the artery walls. And that's a form of toxicity. And then
Yeah, yeah.
finally, if you're eating lots of processed food, at least in America, you look at the label, you're eating
The same here.
artificial colorings and flavorings and preservatives and stabilizers and dough conditioners and this whole chemical soup that pours through your tissues, and that's a toxicity.
It's
We're
exactly the same thing.
we're meant to eat, clean vegetables and fruits and grains that grow out of the garden. If you do
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
you're not going to go too wrong.
Now that I switched to a plant-based diet, basically two-thirds of supermarkets, I have no use of them.
Exactly.
There is so many.
Exactly. You go in, I tell people, decide I'm going to make a soup on Tuesday and a stew on Thursday. I'm going to need three potatoes, 4 onions, 2 carrots. Go in to the produce department, buy what's on the list, and get out of the store
Yeah.
because all the rest is really not healthy for us. And that's the proper way to do the grocery store thing because the rest is a seduction. for taste.
As I was saying in my email earlier, apparently there is a bit of discrepancies between what different experts think, and we get people that are not medical doctors, such as me, get confused often, because on one hand, for instance, we have Dr. McDougall advertising a very starchy diet, which I would tend to agree. I like simple things, so I think that keeping it simple makes sense. And all this idea that, if you eat a plant-based diet, you have to have a huge variety every day, I don't find that so logical. But on the other hand, we have people like Dr. Jason Fung that tell us that carbohydrate is equal insulin and is equal fatty liver and is equal obesity. So we have a huge confusion here very often.
Yes, indeed. And it's sad. Dr. Fung is causing a lot of confusion with that kind of advice. Again, it comes back to that primordial foundation, a whole food, plant-based diet. If you're eating whole plant foods, salads and soups and beans and grains, etc., these are high carbohydrate foods. Nature makes plants out of sugars and starches. Yeah. That's what she does. And so by definition, of course, it's going to be a high carbohydrate diet. But there's a big difference between the carbohydrates in a helping of kale and an apple. Those carbohydrates are very different than in a donut and a sugar cookie and a cola drink. Those kind of sugars is what Dr. Fung is talking about, and those you do want to avoid. I agree. But if people take his advice, say, we shouldn't be eating fruits and vegetables because they're high in carbohydrate. No, that's what we're designed to run on. Those kind of sugars are very gently handled in the body. They don't cause great insulin spikes. You're not going to get a fatty liver eating rice and beans and greens and fruits and vegetables. It's just not going to happen. So as long as you stay with, again, those whole
That's good to hear.
The whole plant foods. You can't, I mean, how many apples can you eat? How much kale can you eat? It's mostly fiber and water. It's not going to hurt you. Now, Dr. McDougall's point that it should be a starch-based diet. Well, he's being realistic in that if you're the average adult male or female needs, let's say 2,000 calories a day. Where are most of them going to come from? In a form that doesn't hurt you. If it comes from meat and oils and sugars, that's that load, which is what most people eat, as far as the burgers and the fried chicken or whatever. Those 2,000 calories come with all sorts of saturated fats and cholesterol and contaminants. That's a toxic food mixture. But if you've got to get those 2,000 calories in, if it's coming from whole grain quinoa and sweet potatoes, the body knows how to handle those, and especially when they're eaten with beans and things that slow down the absorption of these sugars, you don't get these terrible problems that the low carb people wag their fingers at. And so Dr. McDougall is saying you got to get your calories from somewhere. Get it from clean burning carbohydrates. Because the beauty of natural carbohydrates is, as I said, they burn cleanly. They just turn into carbon dioxide that we breathe out and water that we excrete through our kidneys. They're a clean burning fuel, unlike meats, which are, and people who are in ketosis, they're metabolizing these long-chain fats, and you wind up generating metabolic acids, and it's a dirty fuel. Uric acid, all sorts of things build up. So no, we're meant to burn clean burning fuel. Now it doesn't mean that you just got to shove in 8 potatoes a day and 2 pounds of rice and go way overboard on the carbohydrates. But it should be the bulk of the calories at the end of the day should come from whole plant foods that have the starches and sugars in it. So a little common sense goes a long way here.
Yeah. One question to summarize a little bit all that. Getting into the details, we figure out pretty quickly that there are so many actors, enzymes, vitamins, minerals, hormones, etc. It seems that we all have to have a degree in medicine these days. Do you think that it's worth getting educated on these topics as an everyday consumer? I mean, or is it better to just follow a holistic approach and keep it simple?
Yes. Yes is the answer. Yes, you should educate yourself, absolutely. But as you're implying, it's going to come down to whole plant foods. If you eat enough whole plant foods, with starches providing the majority of the calorie, a big helping of rice or quinoa and baked potato, etc., then filling it in with lots of colorful green and yellow vegetables, etc. That kind of diet is going to fill you up and leave you with excellent function and not generate any serious disease. Now, should you educate yourself? Sure, and just read one or two good books, and there's a number of them. In fact, if good maneuver is to go see some of the excellent films that are available. Go to a website called Forks Over Knives and watch the film called Forks Over Knives. And they've got a whole mini course in nutrition there that you can click on. You can take one of the courses from Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, PCRM.org, or Dr. McDougall. His website his newsletter library is an education in itself. Every time you go there to visit, take the Cornell nutrition course. There's lots of good online courses in applied nutrition if you want to get into that. But basically, just reading one good book by Dr. Furman or Dr. Barnard, the Vegan Starter Kit is a good one. And just do that, and then to eat whole plant foods. You really can't go wrong. As you're saying, it's easier than you think. And one last thing on that to mention, Dr. Colin Campbell wrote this book called Whole, WHOLE, and that book is a plea to highlight just what you were implying, all the vitamins and minerals and cofactors. That's what he's saying. Don't function on that level. Because the closer you look, the more complex it gets. The important thing is the quality of the whole food stream that's moving through your tissues, meal after meal, day after day, week after week. If it's filled with those healthy sugars and starches, filled with those phytonutrients from the green and yellow vegetables, filled with the fresh nutrients from the salads and the fruits. That's the important thing. I have a slide it shows the river, a river that pours through your tissues. The water in that river is the water in the fruits and vegetables that are so filled with all these nutrients. Pour that through your tissues, meal after meal, day after day, week after week, and your body transforms. You turn into a healthy person doing that. So don't zero in too much on the individual nutrients. Get your vitamin B12. But other than that, eat your vegetables, and your body will know what to do with the rest.
That's the big problem with getting educated very often, because we have access to so much information, and you never know on what you're gonna land. And basically, I really hope that you guys, the experts in nutrition, in whole food, plant-based nutrition, are having kind of a consensus, because basically we have to step on your shoulders, because it's impossible to read all the studies or experiment everything yourself. So we have to trust someone. And the thing is that when you start getting involved into that, there is so much. It's not even misinformation. It's just interpretation in some. I strongly advise the plant-based nutrition certificate of Dr. Campbell that I took, because it explains pretty well how a study can be misinterpreted without lying. Yeah. Anyway, yes. I hope quite a lot that you are having a consensus. I saw an interview between Dr. Furman and Dr. McDougall a few days ago, and I'm really happy about seeing that they're trying to have a consensus, because that's what we need. It
Yeah.
has always been so complicated. Let's make it
Right.
simple.
Yeah. Over a handful of nuts. It's not worth a big civil war. Have a handful of nuts and get on with your day. Yes, I remember that school.
um, uh, just a few practical advices now that I would like to ask you about. Why does it happen that some people, when they switch to a plant-based diet, for a little time, it can happen that they feel unhealthy, they feel even low on energy, etc. So very often they think that
Relapse.
that's a sign that it's bad for them. They shouldn't be doing that. I often give that comparison in these cases, that if you have had cocaine all your life, when you stop it, you're gonna feel bad, first of all. But well, coming from a medical doctor, it will carry much more weight, I presume.
Right. Such an important question. And everybody knows somebody who, oh, I tried a plant-based diet once, didn't work for me. I didn't feel good. I ate some meat. Whoa, I feel better. I'm a carnivore, and that's where it ends. And
Mhm.
I've heard that so often. I have to say, what are they saying to us? Why does this happen? And what I think is happening is this. Now, I'm a privileged American, and I'm going to say something that I don't know is really true for the average person in Bulgaria, in Europe where you are. But at
Mhm.
least in America, at age 6 months of age, the baby is still nursing at the breast. We're talking about a baby, infant. With all the love in the parent's heart, your mother didn't know, my mother didn't know. But at least in America, at age 6 months, that jar of baby lamb, baby chicken, baby turkey is opened, or some grandmother starts making up a chicken puree or a stew or something. And by 6 months of age, that 3 times a day, the animal flesh is slathered on that child's intestinal tract all through infancy. Throughout by age 2 or 3, they're already in the fast food restaurant eating their Happy Meals now, and they wind up eating a meat-based meal through infancy, through childhood, adolescence, puberty, their teens, their 20s, their 30s. Well, you eat animal flesh 3 times a day since infancy. That's going to create some changes. The body's going to adapt.
Mhm.
The liver is going to set up enzymes that deals with this high fat, high protein, cholesterol containing food stream coming up from the gut. The intestinal mucus will be the best for absorbing nutrients from this high fat, high sugar, low fiber food stream. And very importantly, the enzymes that you have in your tissues to make muscle-related nutrients, carnitine and creatine, myoglobin, things like that. Well, if those molecules are coming in pre-formed 3 times a day in the food, what do you think
Mhm.
the genes are going to do? They're going to downregulate. They're going to, we don't have to make this stuff. It's always in the blood. Every 5 hours, there's a flush of this stuff through the bloodstream. Well, you keep that situation going for 20, 30 years, you become dependent upon this meat-based stream of molecules. Well, then you suddenly make the switch. You see the movie, you read the book, you see an interview like this, and you go jump to a plant-based diet. Most people don't have a problem. Most people can gear up their enzymes and they make their own carnitine. It's not an issue. But a significant number of folks, 10%, 20, 30% of people, it may take them a few weeks or months to gear their enzymes up to make their own muscle-based nutrients. And during that time, they draw down
Mhm.
on their own store. They don't feel so good. And then they eat some meat, and all that preformed carnitine and creatine flushes their tissues. Whoa, I feel great. Vegan, schmegan, I'm a carnivore. But what are we really seeing here? This is not normal human physiology. This is an acquired dependency created by feeding a human infant animal flesh 3 times a day since infancy. No other
Yeah.
primate does that. No gorilla does that. No bonobo does that. No chimpanzee does that. No primate does that. but yet we create this dependency with all the love in the parents' hearts. Yeah, nobody did it maliciously, but I think this is what we're watching, and this is not normal human physiology. This is an acquired dependency. So what do? What do I tell my patients who do this? I say, fair enough. If you feel your body must have some animal protein, it probably does. You probably have a dependency on it, but you can wean off of it. I say, first of all, find the smallest amount of meat you think your body needs, the size of a deck of playing cards. Have that on Monday, whether it's chicken or whatever. Have it on Monday. Coast on that as long as you can. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, until you think your body might need some more. Have another little piece. Coast on that as long as you can. Start by getting your meat eating down to once or twice a week, not once or twice a day. And then start stretching it out as your enzymes gear up. You're going to need this stuff less and less. And I have patients, I might need once a week, I eat my meat. Okay, better than every day. And then you see them a couple months later, I think I ate it twice last month. Okay. And then you see them a few months later, we stopped buying this stuff. It just didn't it wasn't appetizing anymore. And that's often the way it goes. But you can't wag fingers. We all know what it's like to eat meat and not think about it. And some of these folks have a real dependency on it. And if it takes them, I had meat cravings for years after I adopted a plant-based diet, but they eventually faded away, and they will with other folks. So I say, treat it, as you said, like any addiction, and stretch out the intervals, and eventually it falls away altogether. But I think there is some physiology going, but it doesn't say that we're carnivores. That's certainly not the message there.
Well, that answers one of my next questions, which was should we transition more abruptly to a plant-based diet, or should that be kind of a stretch? Basically, I presume that it depends on.
It depends on the purpose. There are lots of people, myself included. Once you see it, I couldn't. Once I saw the truth of eating meat, and I saw the violence involved in the slaughterhouse, and I knew that every time I paid for a meat-based meal, I was paying for the death of an innocent animal, and the next one in line, the slaughterhouse, and I couldn't deny my complicity in this violence, in this horror, and for something we don't really need to survive. And at that point, I couldn't eat it anymore. I mean, it just didn't feel right. And so I made the transition suddenly. But if it takes people a longer time, Confucius said, it doesn't matter how slow you go as long as you don't stop. So just keep moving towards that plant-based ideal. You'll get there eventually. But they said once a week it beats every day. So work towards that, and then phase it out.
Do you think that to help with that cleaning process, to speed it up a little bit, is there some practical advice that you could give, like I don't know, fasting for a certain period or something like that? Would that help?
Oh, absolutely. Your body's got to flush out a lot of accumulated toxins, as we talked about, and a lot of them are related to meats and dairy and the oils and the sugars and the processed foods. You want to flush that out. So how can you do this? First of all, you want to consume plenty of water, no matter what you're eating, but I start my day with a 1 liter bottle of water every morning. I try to go for at least 2 to 3 liters a day. Drink plenty of water. But again, it's a high water content diet. You want to eat those soups and those salads and those steamed veggies. They're full of water. So flush this high water food through your body. So that's square one. Second, a day or two on fresh vegetable juices. If you have the luxury of being able to juice some green vegetables, a little bit of carrot or apple, sip that all day. That's a wonderful way to flush your tissues out. And then, as you implied, a couple of days on water alone. Now people say, I can't miss lunch. How can I go a whole day or 3 days without food? By day 2, by 48 hours, your hunger pretty much goes away, and people feel light and energetic. It's a lovely thing to do. But the whole idea of intermittent fasting, a million years ago on the African plains, it was probably common that 2 or 3 days would go by before you found the next berry bush with fruit on it. And these intermittent fasts were probably the rule, probably normal. Our body had to shift into this fasting gear. And so this kind of summons that rhythm back up. And a few days are just, it's like they say it's like taking your cells to the car wash and just flush fresh water through your tissues. It's a wonderful thing to do. And I've got quite a number of patients who once a month, they'll do 3 days on water, up to 5 days on water once a month. That's a true intermittent fasting program. And they feel lighter and cleaner and better. It's a lovely thing to do. We all eat too much. So, yes, so I'm a big fan of that.
Well, I presume that kind of answers also one of my practical questions that I have very often, and that I want to apply on myself also, because I've been doing that for about 2 years now, feeling great, lost about 12 kilograms. I don't know what that is in pounds.
About 25 pounds.
Yeah, so
Yes.
so I feel great, but like the last 5-6 kilograms, it's pretty impossible to lose them. And my interpretation is that basically this is the normal state of the body. It wants to keep some reserves. So the shredded muscles, that's not the normal state. If you have food, then the body tries to keep some. So what would you advise to lose these last few pounds?
Doctor, I fully commend you for your understanding of physiology. Seriously, that is what's largely involved. The body wants to keep a reserve of fat for a couple of reasons. Again, hearkening back to those ancient times, the body never knows what may have to go 3, 4, 5 days before getting some calories in. So it wants a 4 or 5 days reserve of intra-abdominal body fat inside the abdomen to run on for an emergency fuel. That's correct. Those lean folks would not live long in a famine situation. That's correct. Yeah. But also the body uses those fats. So the body makes hormones out of these fats. And they're involved in cortisol and testosterone, estrogen hormone balance. And so it's another reason why the body doesn't want to give up those last couple of pounds of fat. But that said, a couple things that can be frustrating. If I have someone on a completely plant-based diet and that weight's just not coming off, I fear there's a couple of things they're probably eating that's keeping the fat on them. One are oils in some form, whether it's olive oil or coconut oil, etc. But that's liquid fat in the bottle, and that certainly can stick to you. Second are flour products. And we're talking about baked goods, breads, most breads except these really dark, heavy breads, but anything from a bakery. And we're going to get a little sciencey here, but it turns out that the body can burn both fats and sugars for fuel. But if you eat them at the same time, if you eat a piece of cake, it has sugar, the pastry flour, and it has fat. It's the egg yolk or the lard or whatever's holding that pastry flour together. It's a combination of fat and sugar. And when you give the body fat and sugar at the same time, because it's easier to burn sugars than fats, the body says, oh, fat and sugar. I'll burn the sugar and I'll store the fat for later. So there's that fat-sugar combination really sticks to people. So if you pour oil on your pasta, you'll burn the sugar in the pasta. You'll store the fat in the oil. If you're eating, for other viewers, if they're still eating eggs and toast, you're going to burn the sugar in the toast. You're going to store the fat in the egg yolks. It's these fat-sugar combinations. So liquid oils, flour products, hidden dairy sometimes in bread doughs and things like that. And you're not eating meat, I'm assuming at this point. So look around and get rid of it for the vegan who just stuck those last 10 pounds for a week or 2 weeks. Stop all flour products, all processed food. Just load up on the whole vegetables, on the big salads, hearty vegetable soups, big plates of steamed greens. And nothing involving flour or coming from a bakery.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah, guilty. Basically, I think that what's happening very often is the social part. You have to go out, go to a restaurant, and you're having rice, but it's covered in oil. So
that's
basically,
where it happens. That's where it happens. So you do the best you can on that. Before I go out to eat, I eat. I have an apple. I have a bowl of soup from the fridge, so I'm not starving when I get to the restaurant. So I don't eat all that bread and all that. I'm here to be my friends, not to eat unhealthy food.
I hear a lot of people, a lot of practitioners talking about the positive effect of lowering a little bit your basic metabolism. So basically, the fact that perhaps you're eating a little less, it's a good thing because it slows down the aging process or stuff like that. It's a bit contradictory in my mind with the fact that I want to eat well, but I want to do sports also. And when I go for a big run or 2 hours in the gym, I want to eat the whole building after that. So
good, and you should. You're a healthy animal, and that's what's supposed to happen. You burn the calories, and your body repairs the calorie deficit with hunger. There's nothing wrong with that. The slowing down the aging process, lowering the metabolism, again, that has to do with your food selection. If you're eating, we mentioned earlier that IGF-1, that surge of this hormone that your liver puts out in response to meat, well, that IGF-1 turns on the aging hormone. It turns on a gene called mTOR, M-T-O-R, and that accelerates the aging problem. It's called the death gene, and a high meat diet does that. So it's not the exercise, and it's not the rice and beans after that. It's the meat and the oils and the sugars and those high octane fuels that get the engine, the metabolic engine, running too fast. That's the problem. But lots of physical activity and a healthy plant-based diet will slow down the aging.
No need to lower your metabolism, or it's not just a question of input, oxidation, output.
No, definitely not. It's way more complex than that. Let your body, But so if you want to slow down the aging process, get enough sleep. When we cheat on that, it ages us. Stop eating sugar as a food. It's a flavoring, but don't eat cakes and candies as a food. And drink enough water. When we don't drink enough water, the brain cells shrivel and proteins thicken and turn into amyloid plaque that sets off dementia. So before we worry about exercise, whatever, drink enough water, get enough sleep, and eat whole plant foods. Those are the best things you can do to slow down the aging process.
Yeah, sure. That makes sense. For what you were saying, that just popped up in my mind about the separating the carbohydrates and the fats.
Right, yeah.
Does that apply to the sugars and the fats? Yes. Does that apply to like healthy carbohydrates and healthy fats? Like if you have rice and avocado,
right.
Is that contradictory?
Only if you're trying to lose weight. For the heavy people who are stuck, that's what they have to look at. If you're already a lean, healthy vegan, it doesn't matter at all, and your body will just burn through that real quickly. But if you're that stuck, why aren't I losing this weight? You got to separate out the fats from the carbohydrates. When you eat carbohydrates, it takes about 4 hours for the insulin to go up and down. So the pattern would be have your baked potato at noontime, but don't put oil on it. Put salsa on it. Put something non-fatty on it. Let the afternoon go by, metabolize the carbohydrates, and then have your avocado and nuts in the evening, but put it on your salad. Make a nut dressing and pour it on your broccoli, but eat it with the non-starchy vegetables. So separate out the starches and the fats by about 4 hours. Again, and this is only for people trying to lose weight. If you're already at normal weight, don't make eating should not be an anxiety-producing event. It should be a joyous nourishing of your body. So don't make yourself nuts over.
I would say that even if with a few kilos still on top of what would be the ideal weight, doesn't really matter. It's fine.
It really is. And as the years go by, your body will trim down to a final good configuration. Don't worry too much about the small stuff.
I kept you for a very long time. Good. I have two last questions.
Sure. Yes,
Me too.
Let's go through.
What do you say to the most stubborn people? Because the huge problem that we often face is that the closest people to us it's the most difficult is to make them listen.
Indeed, indeed. And my heart aches when I hear that question because it's such a pervasive and powerful one. What to do? One, don't underestimate the importance of these issues in your own heart. We're talking about your own life, the life of innocent animals, the life of this planet, the life of the children who come after us. There's no more important issues than this. So the most important thing is set a good example. You can't be preachy and that righteous vegan turns everybody off. You don't want to be that, but be unwavering in your commitment. No, I don't eat anything that suffering was. I want to minimize the suffering with every meal that I eat. This matters. The kids are always looking. The animals are always looking. The earth is always looking. My arteries are always looking. Every meal does matter. And I'm going to do the best I can. So set that example, first of all. Second, if there are people who have an overarching concern, I've got patients with diabetes, they hate those insulin shots. They hate being diabetic. So I said, would you like to get off your insulin? Would you like to get off your pills? This is a reversible disease. The patient with the angina, etc. Offer them hope that a plant-based diet will reverse their diseases. And do they have kids? Do they have grandkids? The meat, our industrial production of meat is destroying this planet. And as we all evolve to a plant-based diet, the earth will heal. We'll need so much less land to feed everyone. The forest will come back. The soils will stabilize. Carbon dioxide will be taken out of the air. The waters will get purer. There'll be less water pollution. The earth will begin to heal, and we'll have a planet that we can pass to our grandchildren, because we're stealing from them. It's a theft, what we're doing to their future. So anything that means anything to them, have an open, honest conversation, and because the plant-based diet reflects on it, and love them. Well, I grew up. I didn't become vegan till I was 34, and so. If when I was 21, the present day me showed up that you shouldn't be doing that, I'd say, hey man, I'm not ready to hear that, and you got to be respectful that everybody awakens at the rate that they awaken. But your example in your loving being who you are is the most powerful catalyst to help people get on with this awakening and this unfolding. Yeah. So hold your truth, speak it gently but strongly, and set a good example, and things will get better from there.
Well, it's quite difficult to be respectful of these choices sometimes, because on the other end, what's really painful is that people acknowledge that they prefer being ignorant. So basically, they tell you, yeah, I know that if I watch that documentary, it's gonna put me off my food and it's gonna be awful. Okay, so you acknowledge that it's wrong. Yeah, I do. So how do you want me to be respectful toward that? Yeah. It's really contradictory.
And that's the pain of it, Ilya. And it grieves me, because we all know the cost of that willful denial of that's what you get for talking with your hands. That willful denial of the truth, of the change that needs to be done. But they say you can't make the snake shed its skin before it's ready, and you can't pull it off there. You can't make people do what they're not ready to do. But nature will then intervene. So they'll get that chest pain. They'll pass that blood in the stool from the colon cancer. The legs will start turning blue from clogged arteries, and then they've got their attention. But again, the price gets high at that point. The very act of doing a broadcast like this, you never know who hears, and you never know the example they set, and that person who's really stubborn, their best friend's daughter decided to go vegan, and it changed their best friend. And when the best friend said it to them, maybe, I'm tired of being overweight and constipated. You never know who hears what. The only thing you do is keep speaking your truth.
The movement started. It's
It
difficult
is.
to keep information. I'm really glad that we have social media these days, because otherwise it would have been pretty much impossible to to meet you.
Indeed, indeed.
So
So and it may happen quickly,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
I tell my folks, I think smoking's still pretty prevalent there, but cigarette smoking has really decreased
yeah,
in
yeah.
America. And I tell the medical students when I lecture, what if you were sitting around, 20 of you around a table, and one of the medical students reached in a pocket and lit up a cigarette and started puffing away? What would the other students say? Wouldn't they say, man, are you still doing that in this day? Are you still doing that? Well, that's how much things have changed. Well, we need to get meat eating in the same category. When people order a steak, man, are you still eating that stuff? Are you still eating that burger? That's where we got to get to. And broadcasts like yours are helping that awareness
Well,
change. So that's
we'll see
what we have to do at this
how it
point.
goes. I have the feeling that it's a vicious circle. That's my last question is that I have the feeling that perhaps you can confirm or not this fact that the way people are eating, it changes their behavior, also their way of thinking. As I was saying in my mail, people it's pretty much like civilization has split in two groups of people, basically. Not to be rude in Republicans and Democrats, but basically people that eat a plant-based diet, they will care more about doing arts, and they will enjoy life, and they will. I don't know if there is a causality, but there is a correlation for sure. So on a chemical level, is there incidence on your behavior because of the food? Is there something happening on a chemical?
Of course, there must be on some level. The question is, how big is it, and does that get overwhelmed when? I had a fellow. Two things happen. I've had two patients give up cigarette smoking, and I asked them why. One says, my 4-year-old daughter came to me and said, "Daddy, I don't want you to die. Please stop doing that." And it really spoke to her heart, to his heart. The other one stopped smoking. I asked why. He says, "Oh, my doctor told me, stop smoking. You keep smoking, you're going to die. The bad thing is going to happen." And people do change. People say, "Oh, they never change." They do change, and it's out in the zeitgeist here. So many people, like the cigarette smoking analogy that I mentioned. We used to wear a lot more fur. We used to harpoon whales. We used to do all sorts of things that we just don't do. That there comes a point where society says we got to stop doing that. Well, we've used fishing up, we've used hunting up, we've used meat eating up, we've used wherever they served in human history. We've used that chapter's over. The page is turned. We've used that up. We've got to evolve as individuals and as a species to plant-based diets. And if we do, we'll have an era of hope and health waiting for us here. So hopefully you'll help usher that in.
That's, I think, a very nice way to end that. Even if I could go on for hours,
Indeed.
I
Okay.
strongly hope that we'll be able to grow as an organization here, and hopefully invite you one day to do a conference or something.
Oh,
That would be
absolutely.
amazing.
I'd love to. I'd be honored to. And I'd be glad to Skype in the future if you want to get together a little a
That would be
gathering and
amazing.
we could do a Q&A with people.
Mhm.
And I'd be
Of
glad
course.
to appear electronically there. Anything I can do to help support your efforts, I'd be honored to do that. Count me as an ally.
That's a big honor to me too. Of course, if we can at some point
Meet in
finance
person.
that. That would be great. Oh, in person also. As an IT specialist, I have so many clients and friends from the US. Half of them I never met them, and so I
Well,
really
it's
think that
wonderful
one day.
technology. It's great that's available to us. Let's put it to
But I
good
would
use.
love to come, yeah, one day. But I presume you've been to Europe.
Once or
Uh,
twice, but I'm coming back, and
if
I'll
you're around, you're most welcome in Bulgaria for
well,
as long
thank
as you
you,
want.
thank you. I will let you know if I'm headed in that direction. I will be in
That's
touch.
that's Great. I'm trying to put together courses for people to basically give all the knowledge that I gathered through the years. So if we succeed in making a conference on this topic, or several conferences, I will try to gather a lot of people, and perhaps at this point having you as a guest for a little while would be super cool.
I'd be honored to do that. It'd be a delight. So let's do that.
Thank you
Well,
so much,
you're so
and
welcome.
have a good day, and talk to you soon.
Okay, all the best to you and your viewers there. All the best. Thank you,
Bye.
Ilya. Bye bye.